Hey guys, it's me. It's Queen Offset Haru, and thank you for joining me for another wonderful edition of Ask an Aquarius. If you haven't already, please hit the red subscribe button and smack the bell. Also, if you have time, please drop us a positive comment in the comment section. Give this video a thumbs up and pass it on to somebody else that you know who might enjoy this topic. All right, so I was talking to a young lady on Instagram, and I've talked to her a number of times. I've actually did a reading for her one day. I might have did more than one now to think about it, but we've talked a lot. So I like her a lot. She's a nice young lady. And right now, she's learning how to do oracle cards, which is basically divination, doing readings on herself, basically. So she told me that she feels sick in her gut when she does her own oracle cards. And she wanted to know, did I ever experience this, or if I knew why this would happen to a person. Now, the one thing I do know is that if you Google this, you don't see a lot about certain topics. And this is one of those things. So, first of all, when you're doing cards, your gut instinct is how you know which card to pull, because you're shuffling, and then it's like something in you is like, stop. Like you feel it, it's part of the divination process. That's why you have to have some spiritual ability. You need to be at least clairvoyant to be able to read the cards, because when it's time to stop, you're going to get this gentle nudging in your gut. Everything comes from your gut. I don't care if you're doing cards or not. Your instincts come from your gut. The Egyptians taught us that your soul is located behind your belly button. And they said this because that's where your instinct, your gut instinct is. So they believe that's where your soul lies. We can't really take an x-ray of the soul, so, I take their word for it. So basically, that means that when you're doing cards, or when you're doing scrying, or when you're doing anything that involves intuition, a lot of times they say go with your gut, because you feel it physically, emotionally in your gut. When I'm around somebody who's really messed up, I feel nauseous. When I used to spend time with Voldemort, towards the middle to the end, I would get nauseous every time I talked to him, even if it was just on the phone. And at that point, I wasn't very skilled in understanding my abilities, but that was my soul warning me, like, you should not be around this person. And since then, other people I've come across, sometimes I get nauseous in my gut. So why would this happen if you're just pulling cards on yourself? The only time I've ever experienced this or heard other people experience this is one or two things was going on. The first thing was that something was wrong. The cards was trying to tell them something that they weren't receiving. I had a friend, and at this time we're learning together. And she kept getting a pain. It wasn't a nausea, it was a pain in her stomach. And I was like, well, what were you doing when you get the pain? And she's like, I'm reading myself. And we found out over time that the cards were trying to give her messages, basically was trying to tell her that the gentleman caller in her life wasn't any good. And she kept on pushing past the feeling. So the question is, when you feel sick to your stomach, what are you doing? And she said, I'm pulling my cards. Okay, so what are you seeing? Because sometimes that's saying that whatever those cards are, you're not getting the interpretation. They're trying to warn you about something that you're not getting. So that's one possibility, a strong one that a lot of other people have talked to me about. But like I said, these kind of conversations happen mostly in forums and, word of mouth. You don't see a lot about this written. This video will probably be one of the few videos that talks about it that I've seen anyway. Maybe other people have videos on it. So number two, the second possibility that it could be is that you have some kind of internal blockage about learning how to do cards. A lot of people think that cards and divination is demonic. they think you're talking to demons. You know, the stupidest shit in the world. You know, quite frankly, I don't even entertain it, because I was like, what fool would sit around spending time talking to demons? Like, anybody in their right mind is going to know that's not a good idea. So I ignore when people say stupid stuff like that, but people do believe that. And if you have any of those embedded beliefs on like an unconscious level, then that could be what is making you feel like that as well. Because one of the things I noticed about myself when I first started my spiritual journey, and I knew that I did not want to continue in the Catholic faith, because remember, I was raised Catholic. So one of the things that happened was, when it was time for me to decide on a spiritual system, I knew I didn't want to be Catholic anymore. I knew I wanted to pick something else, but I was afraid to step away. I was afraid to come away from the church, because I really wasn't going to church, but I still would say I was a Christian. You know, I'm still in the group technically, right? And I was afraid not to be in the group, because I thought not being in the group meant I would go to hell. Because all of my life, I've been hearing fire and brimstone as the norm. So in the very beginning, it was really hard for me, because I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be in this group. You ever been in a group you don't want to be in? I was in this group that I didn't want to be in, but I was afraid to come out of it. So sometimes when you first start opening up to spirituality, sometimes those kind of things come to the surface. Sometimes when you first start learning how to do cards, or opening up to your ancestors. And then remember, there's people who are going to say this to you as well, which reinforces it over and over again. And only those of us who are really strong-minded are going to be like, look, keep that over there. You know, I'm going to go do this. You know, only those of us that are really strong-minded can do that. So another thing that could be happening for you is that these unconscious fears could be coming to the surface. So every time you're sitting and trying to focus on your cards, those fears, that anxiety wells up in you, and you might not even be consciously aware of it, because I wasn't consciously aware that I was holding back because I was afraid. Somebody else pointed that out to me, and I sat and thought about it, and I was like, they're right. There is a fear in me. They're right. I had to admit it. You know, I'm Aquarius. I don't like I don't like that shit. You know, I admit when I'm wrong, but I don't like it. I wanted to believe it was something else. But when the person said it to me, I could not deny that they were correct after I soul searched and thought about it. So those are two distinct possibilities that could be happening. Another thing that could be happening, which I didn't ask her this question, so I have to add this in. Another thing that could be happening is the cards themselves. Are these cards clean? Some of the times people use a deck that has energy on it that's not so good. For example, let's say somebody who's not really that good of a person gives me a deck, or I buy it used on Amazon. Because I do have some decks I bought used on Amazon. But when you get a deck that way, or when you get a brand new deck from anywhere really, the first thing you're supposed to do with any deck, new or used, is cleanse it. So my other question is, have you cleansed the deck? Because another thing that can happen sometimes is you pick up on the vibration of the person who had the deck before you. Either using it before you, holding it in the store before you, reading the back of it. Think about how much energy when somebody's looking at something. I remember times when I go into a store and read, look at a deck or look at a book, and I'm holding it, flipping through it. It might be 20 minutes, you know? And then I put it back and leave. And then somebody come right behind me and pick up that same thing. That person has 20 minutes of my energy. And if I'm not that decent of an individual, that energy could be bad, and that energy could be transferring to that object. Oftentimes, objects have bad energy. A lot of hauntings that you probably have seen, like some of the factual hauntings, the ones that actually really happen, and somebody didn't make up in a boardroom, some of those hauntings happen because of an object, a deck of cards, jewelry, a doll, a dresser, being indoctrinated with somebody else's bad energy. So the other possibility, I don't know if you cleanse them. I don't know if you cleanse them properly. I don't know any of that. So another thing that you may want to do, or what I would do, I would cleanse them. I would get some frankincense and myrrh resin. They sell it on Amazon and they sell it in most incense stores. You got to buy the little hookah coals to burn the resin on. Burn the frankincense and myrrh and take the cards and fan them for about 5-10 minutes. Fan them through that smoke and let that smoke cleanse the cards. Then take a clear quartz crystal, a little teeny one, and put it into the bag with the cards. Some cards come in like a box. I would buy a bag like this. This is a bag I got with the Urban Tarot. Buy a bag like this, stick your cards in them, and plop that clear quartz crystal in them and close them up. And leave them like that for a couple days. And then go back and try to do a reading again. So these are the 3 possibilities that it could be. And it's up to you to figure out which one of them it is. And that is something that can be helpful. Now, if neither one of those 3 is helpful to you, you know, if you use those methods and they're not, please feel free to email or inbox me again, and we'll research, or maybe you need to, you know, have me pull some cards on it or something like that. But try this first. See if you can do this first. Okay? All right, guys, it's time for me to get going. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and come back soon, because I have so much more to say. See you later.